Hello everybody and welcome to today's Q&A on Ad Manager MCM. So if you haven't met me before, my name's Heather Murdoch. I'm part of the Access Now success team here at Ezoic. So it's my role to help you find out more about the Ezoic dashboard, the tools that you have in there and the wider publishing space as well. So I know a lot of people watch us on playback. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is if you go to the Ezoic community, there is a thread pinned to the top about Google Ad Manager MCM questions. So if you are watching this on playback and do have questions, do head over there, ask any questions that you've got, and from there I'll be able to answer those for you. So the format of today, we're going to focus mainly on talking you through your live sites and being able to get the live answers for you. So if you take a look at your comment section, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, and let us know in there the site that you would like to be reviewed for MCM, we can take a look at that for you live as part of this session. Do let us know if you're happy for us to share our screens and put your website live on the screen, and then that way we can walk you through it so that you've got live tips that you can then take away and fix as well. If you would prefer not to share your site, that's no problem at all. Again, if you go over to the Q&A section in community, let us know that you're happy for us to take a look at your site. What we can do is we can get your site name through that, and then we can give you tips as part of this session without then sharing that screen. So what I'll do is I'll put the URL of that in the comment section so you can access that there. So if you do have any questions, do let us know in that comment section. We do prioritize questions about Ad Manager MCM, with that being the topic of today. So do let us know. And I'll hand over to my colleague Harry now, who is going to take you through the session today.
Bye. Thanks, Heather. Do you just want... Thanks, Heather. Apologies for anybody that heard a couple of technical difficulties there. My name's Harry, and many of you may have seen me around in the community, Ezoic community before. I'm one of the onboarding managers in charge of the Ezoic Access Now program. And one thing that I do that I sort of specialize in here at Ezoic is helping people get through Google's Ad Manager MCM review. I know a lot of people do have trouble with this, and it can be a little opaque. So I've joined Heather today so we can go through some of the most common things that Google sort of look for in order to approve or not approve sites for Google Ad Manager. I do have a slide there that I'll refer to throughout, but if you do have a site that you'd like me to sort of review live, then please do get it in the comments and let us know the issues that you've been having with it, and I'll be able to help out with this. So I can see straight away that Financial Education has said that their Ezoic account has been approved, but their Ad Manager account status and domain status is still showing as waiting. So what we do need to do when we get sites onto the Ezoic platform is they go through the Ezoic approval process, and then after that we need to, parallel with that, we need to get them through the Google Ad Manager approval process as well. We find that the Ezoic process can take a little shorter than the Ad Manager one. We try to get it done within 1 or 2 days, whereas because Google tend to have quite high demand, we're not the only Google advertising partner that is submitting sites to MCM. We do tend to find that review can take up to 2 weeks. So if you're seeing a status like waiting or pending in your Ezoic account with regards to Google Ad Manager, that's no reason to be concerned. If you just, it's just a case of unfortunately waiting for the 2 weeks to pass, and once you've hit the 2 weeks, you'll get a verdict from Ad Manager. So I hope that helps. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of start making my way through some slides, and we can sort of talk a little bit more about Ad Manager in more detail and the sort of things that you need to make sure you're doing to get your site approved. Okay, so I guess first to start, what is Ad Manager and MCM? What it is, in essence, is it allows Zoe to manage your ad inventory. It gives you access to the high-paying ad demand that Google sort of affords us as a Google publishing partner. And as a result, without Ad Manager, we're unable to show ads on the site. So it is an essential part of the approval process. We've found that Google can be a little sort of vague with their feedback if they're not approving sites, but we have sort of gathered a list of tips and tricks which we'll go through, which can help you get approval on the site. So what is required for Google Ad Manager approval? Typically, we need sites to be compliant with Google content policy. We need to ensure that traffic is of high quality, that you have your current standing with Google is a good one. Any previous history you've had with Google is good. There are no outstanding policy violations. We can go over that a little later in more detail. We need to ensure that the content on your site is high quality and is providing value, which is something we can go over a little later on. And there are a couple of additional steps, things that you may not sort of think of right away, but things that we need to sort of get covered. Just things like adding a way for your users to contact you, and a couple of extra measures to make sure that you're in line with things like GDPR law and stuff like that. So just before we move on, I can see Ramcharan's asked a question. They've said they're facing an issue with their Ad Manager account. I recently tried to apply for an Ad Manager account, but my account was not approved due to an error that indicated I already had a Google Publisher account. Okay, so this is probably the most common reason for disapproval that I see when getting reviewed for Google Ad Manager, and that's that since Google have moved to the Ad Manager MCM system, which was about 18 months ago, they have now required that publishers only have one Google Ads account, and it's referred to as a Google Publisher account. And this includes any Google Ads accounts you've had in the past. So this can be another Google Ad Manager account, an AdSense account, an AdMob account. And essentially, when you apply for Google Ad Manager, if they find another account in their system that has similar details, the same address, same email address, that sort of thing, then they'll flag it as a duplicate. It's usually pretty easy to get around. We just need to find that duplicate account, close it, and then we can get in touch with Google for you and they can review the site. So I can see you've said here that for background, I had applied for Google AdSense a long time ago, but unfortunately it was not approved. I gave up and decided to switch to Azoic. I think that's where the issue is that you're having. So you've created an AdSense account and applied for AdSense, but not been approved. This will stay in Google's sort of record, and it'll mean that when you apply to Ad Manager, Google will detect the disapproved AdSense account as a duplicate, and they won't allow you to move forward until you've gotten that AdSense account approved, unfortunately. So what you can do is reapply for AdSense and appeal. I think that's probably the best way forward at this point. Unfortunately, Google are pretty strict about how many accounts people do have, and they will, and they won't sort of budge on it. If you're applying to Ad Manager, you'll need to get the AdSense application overturned. So we were talking earlier about what is sort of required. I think the first thing I want to make sure that sites are all in line with is Google's content policy. The good news is that Azoic also shares these same rules. We also require sites to be in line with Google content policy. So usually if your site's been approved for Azoic, it means that your site already meets these requirements. With regards to what Google do look for, in general terms, they look for high quality, informative content. The content needs to be original, and family friendly. They typically look for blog style sites, but there are some exceptions. We are seeing a lot of tool or game sites being approved for Google Ad Manager at the moment. And as long as it's heavily moderated, we do tend to find that forum sites can sometimes be accepted as well. Where you might not find that a forum site is accepted is if all content is user generated rather than admin generated and there's no real moderation on the site. We unfortunately we can't really guarantee that the quality is there, so Ad Manager don't tend to approve their sites. But those are the things that they do look for. The sort of things that they don't look for, the sort of things that they want against is I guess a little bit of common sense, explicit content, abusive content, violent content, that sort of thing. Anything that's considered not family friendly is a big red flag for Google and is unlikely to get Google approval at any point. Any content that is either promoting or enabling illegal behavior, or also any content that is carrying out illegal behavior, such as infringement on intellectual property and copyright, that won't get approved. Any sites with making false claims or misinformation, or you may know it as fake news, any fake news sites won't get approval. Any that enable real money gambling, so that allow users to stake their own money in order to win some sort of prize is not allowed. And then we tend not to see sites that are purely e-commerce, or I've also put corporate sites in there. So this means sites that are promoting sort of their own business, which is set up to sort of earn revenue for the publisher. These can be okay if they have a blog alongside them, but if they're just a pure corporate site, then these won't tend to get approved either. So that's sort of a pretty quick summary of the content policy that Google are looking for. With regards to traffic, again, this is something that Ezoic keep a close eye on. We need users to be genuine and engaged. We ask for ideally as high a percentage of possible as organic traffic. We understand that this isn't always fully achievable, but you should have the main bulk of your user base should be organic. And we're looking for things like strong visitor depth. Are your users visiting multiple pages on the site? Are they returning to the site after some time? Not only are they spending time on the site, but are they actually interacting with and engaging with the content? This is all stuff that is indicative of really high quality users. It's stuff that allows you to earn more money from ads, because advertisers tend to pay more for this sort of thing. And that's what both Ezoic and Google require with regards to your traffic. What we don't want to see is purchase bot traffic, poor user engagement. So we'll often see that some users are spending a long time on the site, but they're essentially just not engaging with the content at all. And both Ezoic and Google are able to distinguish between that. Abnormal bounce rates. So this is, if your bounce rate is extremely high, that's not great. And if it's extremely low, that's usually an indication of disingenuous traffic. And we also look for things like unusual activity around ads. So you'll often see that this will often result in Google putting some sort of sanction on an existing Google account. But if we're seeing an unusually high amount of impressions or clicks on an ad, then that's typically a sign that there's some disingenuous traffic on the site, and that is not the sort of thing that Google look for, and you'll struggle to get Google approval with that. So I think the main things to sort of keep in mind with this is make sure that you're growing your user base as organically as possible. You may have social media outlets that promote your site. You may have a big Facebook following. That's great. That's fine. But make sure that your traffic quality remains high. Typically, we find that paying for users is never going to result in high quality traffic. So, so we would strongly recommend against that sort of thing. And it's the sort of thing that Google sort of pick up straight away. Right, so we've talked about content, we've talked about traffic, and this sort of segues a little into what your current standing with Google is. So we do require that in order to get Ad Manager approval, we do require, as the example we sort of used earlier states, that you don't have any existing Google account violations. So this can include on Google Ad Manager, but also in AdSense, AdMob, any Google Ads account needs to sort of be squeaky clean with Google. We don't want any existing sanctions or violations. Otherwise, basically, the account will get automatically denied. And this includes making sure that you have a single Google Ads account, as we discussed earlier. Google are requiring all Google Ads to be funneled through one Google Publisher account, so we can't have multiple AdSense accounts or an AdMob account and a separate AdSense account on a different email address. It just all needs to run under one sort of single account. And the best way to do this when you're applying to Ad Manager is ensure that you're filling out the form correctly. So the form has been updated. So we have some checkboxes just to state whether or not you have existing Ad Manager accounts, existing AdSense accounts. And then what it'll do is it'll just automatically provide the information that you need to give in the application form to make sure you're not getting flagged for any errors or things like that. And so once you have applied, just wanted to go over some of the common account disapproval reasons that you may see. So as I stated earlier, Google reviews your application on an account level and then reviews each domain individually as well. The domain disapproval reasons we'll get into a little later, and they tend to be a bit more sort of varied, but really the most common account disapprovals we see are either a duplicate account or ineligible, or it's sometimes not called a Google policy violation disapproval. So the duplicate account issue, as I stated earlier, this is when Google will detect another account that has the same details as the one that you're applying with to Ad Manager. This is usually a pretty easy fix. We just need you to close all the other Google accounts, and then we can reach out to Google and they'll re-review things for you. One thing to be aware of with this is they'll often find if the same business address has been added on a different Google Ad Manager account, they'll often flag this as a duplicate. So if you live with somebody that has a Google Ad Manager account, that may get flagged as a duplicate because you put in the same residency in when you're applying. So if there's a different address that you can add to make sure that doesn't get flagged as a duplicate, then I'd definitely recommend doing so. And then the other reason we tend to see accounts get disapproved, as I say, is Google will state that the application is ineligible, or they'll state it's been disapproved for a Google policy violation. These are both basically the same thing. It means that they found that there is another Google account, or that the same Google account that has a Google policy violation on it. Unfortunately, the only way to get around this is to find the Google account that is ineligible or that has the policy violation and appeal the decision. The team in the community can always help you to find the relevant appeal form if needs be. So if you're struggling with this, do let us know and we'll be able to help out with this. I'm just going to check the comments to see if we have any questions. It looks like Heather's been helping answer those while I've been talking. Thanks, Heather. Okay, great. So we talked earlier about how Google look for sites that meet their content policy, meet their traffic requirements. We also need to make sure that they have a good standing with Google, which we've gone through. And then the final few things really is ensure that your content is of high quality. So in Google's documents, they state that high quality content needs to provide value, which is a little bit of a vague statement and something which we'll go over in more detail next. You need to have a good amount of content on the site. It should be well organized and it should be easy for the user to navigate. One of the main reasons we do see sites get denied by Ad Manager is that it's just too difficult for the user to be able to find the information that they're looking for. So we'll provide a couple of examples as we go through, and you'll be able to see what we mean when we say that we need to make the site easy for the user to sort of get around and find the information that they're looking for. So what does content that provides value actually mean? So the main thing I tend to see about this is that when Google are looking for valuable content, they're looking for content that's on a specific topic or niche, that's in depth and provides expert information, advice, and knowledge. So the big thing to focus on is ensuring that you stick to the niche that you've selected. The content that you're providing needs to be informative, and it can't just be taken from Wikipedia or something that it needs to have something additional that you can provide, which as the title says, which means that you can provide value. And you need to try and create as much in-depth sort of provide as much in-depth knowledge as possible. The things that Google are sort of looking to disapprove people for are sites in which the scope is too broad. So if your site is focusing on multiple niches, then we need to try and sort of hone that in a bit and focus on a single topic. Another red flag is surface level, really short content that's just providing 50 words in a post about something that doesn't really go into any detail. Google won't approve sites that are either scraped or paraphrased info that can be found on other sites. They tend to be considered low value. And then also repetitive or reused content. So what I mean by that is, an example we might give is a tech site about mobile phones that will have a post saying what is the best charger for a Samsung Galaxy phone, and then what is the best charger for a Google Pixel phone. And within the post, they're all providing the same answer. So you need to make sure that the content that you're providing is actually varied, and it's useful to provide multiple posts that are given sort of different viewpoints, as opposed to essentially the same post posted 10 or 20 times providing the same information, which could have just been condensed into one thing. So what we'll sort of tend to see with this is, if sites don't meet these requirements, we'll tend to see that they get denied for low value content. That's probably the most common domain disapproval reason that we see, and that's just because it can encompass a few different things. But if you're keeping these items on the left-hand side in mind, then that should be able to ensure that you're avoiding that disapproval reason. Another thing that's linked to low value content is when there's just not enough content on the site. So we typically tend to say there's no exact number that Google provide, but typically I tend to recommend that there's at least 15 posts on a site. The site is split into categories, and there are at least 6 posts per category. And the ideal content length is between 500 and 1,000 words. If you want to go longer, you can, but I wouldn't recommend consistently going shorter than 500 words. With regards to making sure your content's organized, your post should be split into categories. If you're providing a wide range of information, we want to make sure that the users are able to get to the info that they're looking for as quickly as possible. So splitting your posts into categories is the best way to do this. One really important point is that a post should not exist across multiple categories. So one thing, a category is there to refine the content and make it easier for the user to decide to find what they're looking for. So for posts to exist across multiple content, it means that the categories, it means that the categories aren't separate enough to be able to provide a useful level of organization. And another thing that Google specifically have said in the past that they don't like to see is categories that are just too broad or too general. So we sometimes see sites that have a blog category or a general category or posts category. This isn't good. We should be refining our content, as I say, by the categories that we create for the site. It shouldn't just be another way to view all posts on the site. So sort of linked into that is that you need to be making sure that, as I say, your site is essentially easy to use for the user. So I mentioned earlier that we need to have sites split posts up into categories. These categories should be displayed in a menu at the top of the page to make it easy for the users to find at all times. The menu should be accessible from any page on the site rather than just the home page. If you want to have drop downs and nested subcategories within there, you can, but you're not required to. But all I would say is that you want to stick to a consistent format for this. So if you're creating a menu for the site and some categories have a drop down containing subcategories, and another category may have a drop down just containing all of the posts within that category, it's an inconsistent format, and that can make it difficult for the user to know how the menu is working. So if in doubt, I would just stick to a single category per link within the menu and just keep it as simple as possible. I think if you're sort of a little confused about which way to go with this, just keep in mind you want to help your users get to your content as quickly as possible. The quicker they get into your content, the quicker they're seeing ads on the site and it's earning you more money, but the better the user experience is overall. So as I say, if you're ever unsure whether you're taking the right step with regards to organizing the content and making it easy to use, just think, will what I'm about to do make it easier for the users to get to the content that they're looking for? And so another thing just to be aware of as well is make sure you've got no broken links on the site. Ensure that users won't navigate to a place that will get them stuck at any point, and that everything is sort of working and up and running on the site as well. And one thing that I tend to always recommend if people are getting denied by Google Ad Manager, be that for low value content, which is really common, but also one of the reasons provided can be navigation as well, which it sort of sits in with this too. Make sure you have a contact page and an about us page, just providing a little bit of information on the site and what it's about. I would definitely recommend putting them in the top menu so they're easy for the user to find. And if they need to get in touch with you about something, they can do. I know some people do tend to steer away from having contact pages on this site, but it is actually a requirement within GDPR regulations that your users have a genuine way for them to be able to get in touch with you, just in case there are any sort of personal data requests or anything like that. So I took a bit of time to get a few examples here that just sort of refer to what a bad menu can look like versus what a good menu can look like. I know I'm hammering home this point, but it is something that we tend to find is the reason why sites don't get approved, is just because the menu isn't simple enough to use. So the first one here is essentially as bad as an example as you can get. Just has a blog section, which again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't like to see items in the menu that don't refine your content, and a homepage link. So this isn't great. A slight improvement on it, we've added a contact page, a link to a privacy policy, which is again required for sort of GDPR regulations. It's a little better, but again, we're not really refining the content at all. And your categories really need to be in the menu to, again, put yourself in that mindset of how is what I'm doing making it easier for my users to be able to get to my content. I definitely argue not with this menu. So on the other hand, a good menu example is something that has clearly defined categories within it. So you can see here, this is globalmcdonaldsmenu.com. This talks about different items that are available at McDonald's at different McDonald's around the world. This is clearly split up by continent, which is something that's that any user can understand. If they're going to go into the drop down within Europe, they're going to find countries in Europe and then go on from that to then find menu items that are only available in their countries. This is ideally the sort of thing that we're looking for. They also have a search function here, which is something that makes it even easier for users to find specific information if they do want to use it. A search function isn't absolutely required, but I would always recommend it. And then we've got an about drop down, which does contain contact pages and a privacy policy as well. So it means that if there's any reason that a user might need to get in touch with the website owner, then they can do. This is sort of the ideal menu that we look for. And within that, just don't forget that creating categories is great, but you need to make sure that there's enough content within those categories. So just to go back to that rule before, at least 6 posts per category is what you want to be looking for. And so there are a couple of additional considerations as well, just before we finish up. Make sure that your site is up and running. So one reason that Google might deny a site is if they're unable to access it. They're unable to verify whether the content is what they're looking for. So if you have any issues with connectivity, I would definitely ensure you get those fixed before applying to Ad Manager. And turn off any site under maintenance pages. Google have a specific denial reason for they found the site was under maintenance. So this is obviously something that they're running into quite a lot. So if you have any this site is under construction plugins or anything like that, make sure that they're turned off. And if your site isn't ready to be published, that's okay. Then just hold off from applying to Ad Manager until it is, because they won't be able to approve the site until the content is where they're at and your traffic's where it's at as well. Another thing to make sure you've done, it's an essential part of the Azoic setup process, is to set up your ads.txt file. It can be done so in your Azoic dashboard. There's a step within the each of the setup steps. There's a step that says ads.txt. It's an automatic process. It takes a couple of seconds to do. But it is required in order to get Ad Manager approval, because we need to use your ads.txt file to allow Google to show ads on your site. And another one, which sounds oddly specific, but we see it quite a lot. If you include a privacy policy in your top menu, then it means that it's easy for your users to find, which ensures that you're staying within GDPR regulations and guidelines, which is something Google requires for approval. So just a little thing at the end there, but something that we tend to find can be the difference between being disapproved and being approved for Ad Manager. So that is the end of my slide deck. I realize there's a lot of info to take in, but I hope you found it useful. If you do have any specific questions, or you want us to test your site, to take a look at your site live, then we can do so. Feel free to get them in the comments. I can see Financial Education has asked how to send a link to open a ticket. So this can depend on at which point you're at in our level system. It can be slightly different. That your level depends on how you get in touch with a member of our support team. So if you can let us know what your site is or your level, then we'll be able to help with that. Tech Howard said that it'd be awesome to sort of take a look at their site live. We'd be more than happy to do that. are you able to add your domain name into the comments, and we can go through your site as an example? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so this is Tech House site, which the good news is this is actually already been approved for Google Ad Manager MCM. So so it looks like you've got everything in place that is required. But it gives us a good opportunity to go through what a good example of a site is for this sort of thing. So I can see that you've got categories up here that are clearly defined. So we've got tutorials split up by various categories, operating systems and software. That's great. You also have a separate category on equipment here. So, so this looks like an e-commerce section of your site. E-commerce is fine as long as you've got a blog section to sort of back that up as well. I can see you've also got links to your YouTube channel here, which is great. A contact page, excellent. And about us and details on advertising. This is all definitely the sort of thing that we look for. The site's easy to navigate. It looks like you've got a wealth of content here. So I'm just going to go into one of your categories. You've got loads of posts here, which is excellent. You've definitely got far more than the sort of minimum six per category. And then if I go into the content itself, it's clear, it's easy for us to understand. It looks like you've got plenty of content there. Images are also always great as well. And if you do have images mixed in with your written content, make sure that all the image links are working. The content itself is on the shorter side, is one thing I would say, but if you're providing tutorials for things like installing drivers, there's only so much information is actually required. So I would say that you are providing an appropriate amount of value here. So yeah, this is just a great example of a site that I would consider to be high quality and one that I would expect to get approved for Google Ad Manager. So great stuff on that. Yeah, no problem. It's so we've just overrun slightly on our initial half an hour time frame, so we're gonna sort of close that up for today. But I do want to take the time to thank everybody for joining. I do hope you found this all useful, and don't forget, if you do have any questions about Ad Manager and getting approval, then you can refer to our support articles, which Heather's kindly posted in the comments. And you can also get in touch with us via the community as well. And we'd be always happy to take a look at your site and help. But yes, thanks again for joining, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.